"You do not live upstairs anymore," Rebecca said, like she was reminding me to take out the trash, not erasing me from my own home. Emily Carter stood frozen in the doorway, her suitcase still in her hand, her heart racing faster than the long flight that had brought her back. The house smelled the same, like lemon cleaner and something warm from the kitchen, but everything else felt wrong. Her eyes scanned the hallway automatically, landing on the place where her bedroom door should have been slightly open, the way she always left it. It was closed now, tightly, almost deliberately. "I just got in," Emily said, her voice smaller than she intended, like she had already started shrinking to fit whatever space Rebecca had decided she deserved. Rebecca did not raise her voice. She never did. That was part of what made it worse. "And I already told you," Rebecca replied, smoothing down the sleeve of her perfectly pressed blouse, not even looking directly at Emily. "Your room is no longer available." Emily let out a quiet laugh that did not feel like hers. "What does that even mean?" She stepped past Rebecca without waiting for permission, her sneakers echoing too loudly on the hardwood floor, like the house itself was rejecting her presence. When she reached her bedroom door, she pushed it open without knocking, and then she stopped breathing. The walls were bare. The bed was gone. The shelves that once held her books, her photos, her entire life, had been cleared like someone had hit reset. In its place sat a sleek desk, a minimalist chair, and a neutral-toned rug that looked like it belonged in a catalog, not in the room she had grown up in. It was not just redecorated. It was replaced. "What did you do?" Emily whispered, stepping inside like she was trespassing in someone else's space. Rebecca appeared behind her, calm, composed, already prepared. "I converted it into a home office," she said. "Your father and I agreed it was time to make better use of the space." Emily turned sharply. "You agreed?" Her chest tightened. "Dad would never." "Your father is not here right now," Rebecca cut in gently but firmly. "And this decision has already been made." There was something in the way she said it, final and smooth, that made Emily feel like arguing would only make things worse. Like she had already lost a fight she did not even know she was in. "So where am I supposed to go?" Emily asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Rebecca finally met her eyes then, and for a brief second, there was something colder underneath the surface. Something calculated. "The basement is available," she said. "We had it cleaned." The basement? Emily blinked, trying to process it. That space had always been for storage, old boxes, forgotten things. Not people. Not her. "You are joking," Emily said, but her voice cracked at the end, giving her away. Rebecca did not smile. "I am not." Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Emily felt it pressing against her chest, making it harder to breathe. This was not just about a room. This was something else. Something deeper. Because no one just erased someone like this without a reason. And as Emily stood there, staring at the place where her life used to be, one thought settled in, quiet but sharp. Rebecca was not just pushing her out. She was making sure Emily did not belong here anymore. Emily did not remember walking down the stairs to the basement, only the sound of her suitcase wheels bumping against each step like a quiet protest she was too exhausted to voice out loud. And when she reached the bottom, she stood still for a moment, taking in the space that was now apparently hers, the air cooler than upstairs, carrying a faint scent of detergent mixed with something older, like cardboard and time. And although Rebecca had said it was cleaned, it still felt like a place meant for things that people did not want to see every day, not for someone who had just come home expecting familiarity and comfort. And she slowly set her suitcase down beside a narrow bed that looked recently placed, the sheets tucked too tightly like they were trying to prove something. And for a second she just stared at it, wondering how a house could feel so unfamiliar so quickly, how a place that used to hold her entire life could now push her into a corner without even raising its voice. And then she heard footsteps above her, steady and controlled. and she knew without looking that it was Rebecca moving through the kitchen like nothing had changed, like everything was exactly the way it should be, and that realization made something inside Emily tighten, not just frustration but something sharper, something closer to awareness, because this did not feel random, it felt planned, and that was what unsettled her the most. And later that evening when she went upstairs, careful not to make noise even though she should not have had to think about that in her own home, she noticed how everything seemed slightly rearranged, not drastically but enough that it felt intentional, like small adjustments designed to erase traces. And when she opened the refrigerator, she saw labeled containers, each one neatly organized, none of them hers, not even a space left empty as if someone had expected her to return. And when she reached for a glass, Rebecca's voice came from behind her again, calm and precise, saying that dinner had already been portioned and she should stick to what was prepared. And Emily turned slowly, realizing this was not just about a room, this was about control, about being managed. And she nodded without arguing because something told her that reacting would only give Rebecca more ground. And as the night settled in, Emily lay on the unfamiliar bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of movement above, cabinets opening, a phone ringing once and then quickly silenced, footsteps pausing near the top of the stairs like someone was making sure she stayed where she was supposed to be. And that was when Emily noticed something else, something small but impossible to ignore, a soft scraping sound coming from somewhere beyond the basement wall, not loud enough to alarm, but steady enough to feel deliberate. And she sat up slowly, holding her breath, trying to locate it, wondering if it was just pipes or something settling. But deep down she knew it was not, because everything about this house right now felt too controlled to allow random noise. And as the sound faded, replaced by silence that felt heavier than before, one thought settled into her mind with quiet certainty. Rebecca was not just changing the house, she was hiding something inside it, and whatever it was close enough that Emily could almost hear it breathing. Emily did not sleep much that night, and by morning the house felt even quieter than before, like it was holding its breath. And she moved carefully as she went upstairs, her mind replaying the faint scraping sound she had heard, trying to convince herself it was nothing while knowing it was not. And when she reached the kitchen, Rebecca was already there, standing perfectly still at the counter with a cup of coffee, as if she had been waiting, and without turning around she said that breakfast was on the table, and that Emily should not be late for anything she had planned, even though Emily had not mentioned any plans at all. And that detail made something shift inside her again, because it felt like Rebecca was always one step ahead, always aware of more than she should be. And Emily sat down slowly, noticing that everything on the table was arranged with precision, nothing out of place, not even a crumb. And as she picked at the food, she glanced toward the hallway where her old room used to feel like hers, and now it looked like a space she needed permission to even look at. And when Rebecca finally packed away together, hidden, and that was when Emily understood that this was not just about moving her out of a room, this was about erasing something or someone. And before she could think further, she heard Rebecca's voice again, closer this time, ending the phone call abruptly. And Emily quickly pressed the tape back into place, standing up just as Rebecca appeared at the end of the hallway, her expression unchanged but her presence suddenly sharper. And for a moment neither of them spoke, but the silence felt heavier than any argument. And then Rebecca said quietly that some things were better left untouched, and Emily nodded slowly, even though her thoughts were racing, because now she was sure of one thing. Whatever Rebecca was hiding was not just in the basement walls or behind locked doors. It was already being moved, already being covered up, and if Emily did not figure it out soon, it might disappear completely before her father ever came back. That night Emily did not wait for another strange sound to confirm what she already felt, because something had shifted inside her from confusion into quiet determination. And as the house settled into silence again, she sat on the edge of the basement bed watching the shadows along the walls, tracing where the faint noise had come from the night before. And after a few minutes she stood up slowly, moving closer to the section of the wall where the sound had been the strongest. And at first it looked completely normal, just painted drywall with nothing unusual about it. But when she pressed her palm lightly against it, she felt something subtle, not movement exactly, but a difference, like the space behind it was not solid the way it should be. And her heart started to beat faster as she ran her fingers along the edge until they caught on a slight seam that had been painted over carefully, almost too carefully, and she stepped back for a moment, her mind racing, because this was not an accident, this was intentional. And just as she reached out again, she heard footsteps above her, sharper this time, moving quickly across the floor, and she froze, holding her breath, waiting, and then everything went quiet again. But the silence did not feel empty, it felt like it was watching her, and she slowly stepped away from the wall, forcing herself to act normal, because whatever this was, she could not risk being caught yet. And the next morning Rebecca acted exactly the same as before, calm, controlled, asking if Emily had slept well in a tone that sounded polite but carried something underneath it that made Emily hesitate before answering. And she simply nodded, choosing her words carefully, because now she knew that every reaction mattered, every expression could be noticed. And as the day went on, Emily paid closer attention to Rebecca's movements, noticing how often she checked her phone, how she stepped into another room before answering calls, how her voice dropped just enough to make sure it could not be overheard. And once, as Rebecca moved quickly past the hallway, Emily caught a glimpse of something in her hand, a folder, thick and worn, with documents partially visible inside. And for a split second Emily recognized a familiar name printed at the top, her mother's name, and before she could react, Rebecca had already tucked it away, her expression unchanged, but her pace slightly faster, like she knew she had almost been seen. And that was the moment everything connected in Emily's mind. The missing items, the sealed boxes, the strange wall, the quiet phone calls. It was not just about control or even just about hiding something. It was about rewriting something, something tied directly to her mother. And later that afternoon, when Rebecca left the house for what she described as a quick errand, Emily did not hesitate this time. She moved quickly but carefully, going straight to the hallway closet where she had seen the boxes, and she opened one fully, ignoring the risk, pulling out the albums and papers inside, flipping through them with shaking hands. And what she found made her stomach drop, because several pages were missing, not torn out violently but removed cleanly, deliberately, as if someone had taken only what they needed and left the rest behind to look untouched. And just as she was processing that, she heard something that made her freeze completely, the sound of the front door opening again much sooner than expected, followed by Rebecca's voice calling out in that same calm tone, asking if Emily was home. And in that moment Emily realized she was running out of time, because whatever Rebecca was hiding was already in motion, and she had just stepped directly into it. Emily's hands moved faster than her thoughts as she shoved the photo album back into the box, pressing the lid down just as the sound of Rebecca's footsteps echoed closer across the hardwood floor. And she forced herself to breathe normally, to look like she had not just uncovered something she was never meant to see. And when Rebecca appeared in the hallway doorway, her expression was exactly the same as always, calm and unreadable, but her eyes scanned the space quickly, landing on the box, then on Emily, and for a brief second there was a pause that felt too long to be casual. And Emily straightened up, brushing her hands against her jeans like she had only been tidying up, and Rebecca stepped forward slowly, her voice even as she asked what Emily was doing. And Emily replied that she was just looking for a few of her old things, keeping her tone light even though her chest felt tight. And Rebecca nodded once, as if accepting the explanation. But then she crouched down beside the box and pressed the lid more firmly into place, smoothing the tape with deliberate care. And that small gesture said more than any argument could have, because it was not about organizing, it was about sealing something away. And Emily stepped back slightly, watching every movement, realizing that Rebecca was not panicking. She was controlling the situation again, resetting it, and that meant whatever was missing from those albums was already gone, already somewhere Emily could not easily reach. And as Rebecca stood up, she said quietly that some memories were better left in the past. And this time her eyes held Emily's just long enough to make the meaning clear. And Emily nodded again, but inside her mind everything was shifting, because now she understood that this was not just about erasing her presence in the house, it was about rewriting the past itself. And later that evening Emily returned to the basement with a different kind of focus. Her thoughts sharper, more precise, and she went straight to the wall she had examined before, tracing the seam again with her fingers, and this time she did not hesitate. She pressed harder along the edge until a faint click broke the silence, so quiet she almost thought she imagined it, but then the panel shifted just slightly, enough to reveal a narrow gap, and her heart pounded as she carefully pulled it open, revealing a small hidden space behind the wall, not large but intentional, and inside were several folders stacked neatly, along with a locked metal box that looked far newer than everything else in the basement. And Emily reached in slowly, pulling out one of the folders, her hands trembling as she opened it, and what she saw made her breath catch, because the documents inside were not random. They were official, legal papers, some with her mother's name, others with her father's, and several that appeared altered, signatures that did not quite match, dates that felt off. And as she flipped through them, one line stood out clearly, something about property ownership, about transfers that had been changed. And before she could process it fully, she heard it again, footsteps above her, slower this time, deliberate, and then the unmistakable sound of the basement door opening. And in that moment Emily realized she was no longer just suspicious, she was caught in something much bigger, something that Rebecca had been carefully hiding. And as the light from the stairway stretched across the floor toward her, she had only seconds to decide whether to hide the truth again or finally face what it meant. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs as the basement door creaked open, and in one smooth motion she slid the folder back into the hidden space, pushing the panel just enough to make it look untouched before stepping away, forcing herself to turn as if she had been doing nothing at all. And when Rebecca appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her silhouette framed by the light above, there was no surprise in her expression, only a quiet, searching stillness, like she had expected to find Emily there. And for a moment neither of them spoke, the silence stretching thin between them until Rebecca finally stepped down onto the concrete floor, her eyes moving briefly across the room before settling on Emily, and she asked in that same calm tone why Emily was still awake, and Emily answered that she could not sleep, keeping her voice steady even though her pulse was racing, and Rebecca nodded slowly, as if accepting that, but then she took another step forward, her gaze shifting subtly toward the section of the wall where the hidden panel sat, and Emily felt the tension rise instantly, because it was clear now that Rebecca knew exactly where to look, and that realization made everything sharper, more dangerous, because this was no longer about guessing, it was about being watched. And Rebecca said quietly that the basement could feel unsettling at night, that unfamiliar places often did, and Emily forced a small shrug, replying that she would get used to it, even though every instinct told her that was not true. And Rebecca's lips pressed into a faint smile that did not quite reach her eyes, and she said that adjusting was important, especially when circumstances changed, and the way she said it made it sound less like advice and more like a warning. And after a few more seconds, Rebecca turned and walked back up the stairs without another word, leaving the door slightly open behind her, and Emily stood there, listening until the sound of her footsteps disappeared. And only then did she let out the breath she had been holding, her mind racing through everything she had just seen, everything she had almost been caught holding, and she knew now that the documents were real, that the changes she had suspected were not just possibilities but actions already taken, and that meant her father had no idea, because if he did, none of this would be happening. And that thought settled into something firm inside her, something that felt less like fear and more like resolve. And the next morning Emily woke up earlier than usual, moving carefully through the house while it was still quiet, and she noticed that Rebecca's car was gone, the driveway empty except for the faint marks left by the tires, and that small window of time felt like an opportunity she could not ignore. And she went straight back to the basement, opening the hidden panel fully this time, pulling out the folders again and scanning them more quickly, more urgently. And as she flipped through the pages, one document stood out more than the others, a transfer form that listed the house itself, with her father's name printed clearly at the top and another name beneath it, Rebecca's. But what made Emily freeze was the signature, because it did not look right, not the way she remembered her father signing anything, and beneath that, a date that fell during a week when he had been out of state, something Emily knew for certain because she had spoken to him during that trip, and as that realization sank in, a quiet but undeniable conclusion formed. This was not just manipulation, this was something deliberate, something planned while her father was away, and before she could think further, her phone buzzed suddenly in her hand, making her flinch, and when she looked down, her breath caught, because the message on the screen was from her father, and it said simply that he would be home sooner than expected. And in that moment Emily understood that everything was about to change, because Rebecca had been preparing for something, and now time was running out for both of them. Emily did not hesitate this time as she gathered the most important documents from the hidden compartment, her hand steady despite the urgency pressing against every second, and she slid them carefully into her bag before sealing the panel back into place, making sure it looked exactly as it had before, because she knew now that this was not just about discovering the truth, it was about protecting it long enough for the right person to see it. And as she stepped back into the main area of the basement, her phone still in her hand, she reread her father's message, the words feeling heavier each time, because his early return was not just unexpected, it was a disruption to whatever timeline Rebecca had been working under, and that meant things might escalate faster than she was ready for. And when she went upstairs, the house felt different again, quieter but more tense, like something was about to shift, and she moved through it carefully, placing her bag near the kitchen table, keeping it within reach, and as the hours passed, she found herself watching the driveway through the window, waiting for any sign of Rebecca's return. And when the sound of a car finally broke the stillness, her chest tightened, because she knew this was the moment everything would begin to collide. And Rebecca walked in as composed as ever, setting her keys down with that same controlled precision. But her eyes immediately scanned the room, landing briefly on Emily's bag before moving away. And Emily realized in that instant that Rebecca noticed everything, even the smallest changes. And that meant she had to be even more careful now. And Rebecca asked casually if Emily had plans for the day, her tone light but her gaze sharp, and Emily shook her head, replying that she was just waiting to hear from her father, watching closely for any reaction. And for a split second, something flickered across Rebecca's face, not surprise but calculation, and then it was gone, replaced by the same calm expression. And she said that Daniel's schedule could be unpredictable, that it was better not to rely on exact timing. And the way she said it made Emily realize that Rebecca had not expected him to return yet. And that detail gave Emily a small but important sense of control, because for the first time since she had come back, Rebecca was not completely ahead. And as the afternoon stretched on, the tension built quietly, neither of them confronting the other directly, but both aware that something unspoken was approaching. And when the sound of a car pulling into the driveway finally came again, different this time, familiar, Emily's breath caught, and she turned toward the front door just as it opened, and Daniel stepped inside, his presence filling the space in a way that immediately shifted the atmosphere. And he smiled at first, setting his bag down, greeting them both, but that smile faded slightly as he looked between them, sensing something beneath the surface, something off, and Rebecca moved forward smoothly, her voice warm as she welcomed him home, her hand briefly touching his arm in a gesture that looked natural but felt practiced. And Emily stood still for a moment, her heart pounding, because this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment everything depended on. And as Daniel turned toward her, asking how she had been, Emily met his eyes, holding his gaze just long enough to make sure he understood that her answer was not simple. And in that silence, something shifted, because he saw it, the tension, the difference, the unspoken weight. And as he looked around the house again, taking in the subtle changes, the missing pieces he had not yet named, Emily realized that Rebecca was no longer the only one controlling what happened next, because now her father was here, and the truth was no longer something that could stay hidden for much longer. Daniel did not say anything right away, but Emily could see the shift in his expression as he slowly walked further into the house, his eyes moving from the kitchen to the hallway and then back again, like he was trying to understand what felt different without being able to name it yet. And Rebecca stayed close to him, her posture relaxed, her tone warm as she asked about his trip, filling the space with normal conversation that sounded almost too smooth, like it was meant to guide his attention away from everything else. And Emily stood still for a moment, watching them, realizing that if she waited too long, Rebecca would control this moment the same way she had controlled everything else. And so before the silence could settle into something comfortable, Emily stepped forward slightly and said that she needed to show him something, her voice steady but firm enough to break through the calm atmosphere Rebecca was trying to maintain. And Daniel turned toward her immediately, his brows pulling together just slightly, sensing the weight behind her words, while Rebecca's expression did not change but her hand tightened almost imperceptibly around the edge of the counter. And for a brief second the room felt balanced on something fragile, like one wrong move could tip everything. And Daniel asked what was going on, his tone no longer casual, and Emily did not look at Rebecca as she reached for her bag, pulling out the folder she had taken from the hidden compartment, her hands steady now because she knew this was the moment she had been working toward. And she placed the documents on the table in front of him, opening them just enough for the key pages to be visible. And as Daniel leaned closer, his expression shifted again, this time more clearly, confusion giving way to concern as he scanned the papers. And Rebecca stepped forward then, her voice calm but firmer as she said that those were just old documents, nothing that needed attention right now. And Emily finally looked at her, meeting her gaze directly, and said quietly that they were not old, that the dates were recent, that the signatures did not match. And Daniel's head lifted at that, his eyes moving between them as he processed what he was hearing, and the room seemed to hold its breath again as he picked up one of the papers, studying it more carefully. And the silence stretched longer this time, heavier, because this was no longer about subtle tension or unspoken discomfort. It was about something concrete, something that could not be dismissed as easily. And Rebecca took another step closer, her tone still controlled but edged now with something sharper as she said that there was an explanation, that Emily did not understand the full situation. And Emily shook her head slightly, not raising her voice, not reacting emotionally the way Rebecca might expect, but simply stating that the dates did not line up with when Daniel had signed anything, that he had been out of state at the time. And that was when Daniel's expression changed completely, the uncertainty giving way to something more focused, more alert, and he looked directly at Rebecca, asking quietly what exactly this was. And for the first time since Emily had come home, Rebecca did not answer immediately. And that small pause said everything Emily needed to know, because it meant the control Rebecca had held so tightly was starting to slip. And as Daniel waited, the weight of the moment pressing down on all of them, Emily realized that the truth was no longer something hidden in walls or sealed in boxes. It was right there on the table, and it could not be pushed back into silence again. Daniel's eyes stayed on the document longer than Emily had ever seen him focus on anything, his fingers gripping the edge of the paper just slightly tighter as he read each line again, slower this time. And when he finally looked up, the air in the room felt completely different, no longer balanced, no longer controlled, but unsettled in a way that could not be smoothed over. And he asked Rebecca again, this time more directly, how his signature had ended up on a document dated during a week he clearly remembered being out of state. And Rebecca inhaled quietly, her posture still composed but her expression shifting just enough to show that she was calculating her next move. And she said that it had been handled through a proxy, that paperwork could be managed in different ways, her tone calm but now carrying a layer of explanation that had not been there before. And Daniel frowned slightly, not convinced, his gaze returning to the page as if looking for something that would either confirm or contradict what he was hearing. And Emily stayed silent, watching the exchange carefully, because she understood now that this was not about pushing harder. It was about letting the truth reveal itself. And the silence stretched again until Daniel set the paper down on the table, his hand lingering there as he processed everything. And then he asked a question that changed the direction of the room completely. He asked why Emily's room had been cleared out without his knowledge, and for the first time since he had arrived, Rebecca's composure faltered just slightly, her answer coming a second too late as she said it was a practical decision, that the space was needed, but Daniel's expression did not soften, because now he was seeing the pattern, the missing details, the changes that had been made without him, and he turned toward Emily. His voice quieter but more serious as he asked where she had been staying, and when Emily answered that she had been sleeping in the basement, the words seemed to settle heavily in the room, and Daniel's jaw tightened, not in anger that exploded outward, but in a controlled, focused way that made it clear he was no longer just listening, he was evaluating. And Rebecca stepped forward then, her tone more urgent as she said that it was temporary, that adjustments were being made for the household, but Daniel raised his hand slightly, not aggressively but enough to stop her, and he said that nothing in this house should be decided without him knowing, and that simple statement shifted everything, because it drew a line that had not been there before, and Emily felt it, the change in balance, the control that Rebecca had held beginning to break apart. And as Daniel gathered the documents again, flipping through them with more intent, Emily noticed something she had not fully processed before, a second set of initials on one of the pages, smaller, almost hidden near the bottom, and her eyes narrowed slightly as she leaned closer, realizing that those initials did not belong to either her father or Rebecca. And as that detail settled in, a new question formed, sharper than anything before, because if Rebecca had not acted alone, then this was not just a secret within the house, it was something larger, something involving someone else entirely. And as Daniel looked up again, preparing to ask another question, Emily knew that uncovering the truth had only revealed the surface, and whatever was coming next would be even more complicated than she had imagined.